Okay, the webinar is live and I'm about to. Shoot. Let's see.
Okay. Hi. My name is David Salco. I'm the chairman of the Traffic Commission, new one. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Um, Quickly, I'll take the roll. I see that we have Lucia, Karen, Sharon, and Robert, and myself. Uh, Anybody else that is a commissioner that I haven't recognized? No? Okay, so as we have 5 of the 7 voting members, we do have a quorum. Um, I'd like to confirm that all of the members of and I'm opening the meeting, I'd like to make sure that all of the members of the commission received the agenda, and in the agenda, the minutes from the last meeting in April and the meeting before in February. Is there anybody who didn't receive that? No. Okay, that's good. Later on, when we go to approve the minutes, you all will have read it. One little bit of housekeeping. At the last meeting, I said that we needed 5 members to be a quorum because we needed a majority of the 9-member commission. Since then, I was made aware that back in March, the Board of Trustees amended the membership rules of the Traffic Commission so that the 7 non-police and non-fire members are the full voting membership of the board, and so a quorum is a majority of that, which would be 4. So that make a note. So we'll go on to the new items of new business and then old business, and we won't be able to get to much of the old business as we're still waiting for village employees to be able to do research on our issues, and they are not able to because of the constraints brought them on with the COVID emergency. Welcome, Andres Garcia. Make a note, Lucia.
Yep.
To have you with us.
Excuse me, David, is there a police officer here? I thought I saw.
Hi, I'm here.
Oh, okay, Joe, okay. I wanted to get your last name.
Gaglione?
Yeah, Gaglione, correct?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, so we'll go on to the first item of new business, and I'll read a summary of the report we received from the resident. If the resident that asked about the item and put it on the agenda is present, they'll be asked if they have anything additional to add. If there are any other residents present that wish to speak on the matter, they'll be recognized next. And then the commissioners will be recognized one at a time if they have any questions or comments. I ask that the commissioners and residents please wait until you're recognized to speak so that we can all hear everything. And Lucia can take accurate minutes. With the Zoom format, it's a little difficult if more than one person is speaking at a time. So we have to make a extra effort to make sure that everybody can be heard. So the first item is Crown Court and Norwood Avenue, and resident Alex Skorodinsky requested a stop sign at the northeast corner of Crown Court and Norwood Avenue. I'm assuming that that's the stop sign would be on the downhill side of Norwood, where it's actually it's Drury Drive coming in from the right and Crown Court coming in from the left. He says that the drivers on Norwood can't see the vehicles coming out of Crown, and also the people coming out of Crown have difficulty seeing the cars coming down Norwood and around a curve. Is Alex Skorodinsky here?
The only attendee I see is Larry F.
Okay,
So that may be Larry Farkas,
okay.
former
let's see.
member, but he does not have his hand raised.
So do that, do that. All right, so there's the, I've shared the Google Maps of it, and you can see that this is the intersection we're talking about here. Can you see, everybody see that?
Yes,
Okay, I'm succeeding. All right, and so they're talking about the cars coming down Norwood and wanting a stop right there. So let's start with Andres Garcia. Do you have anything you want to comment on this? Okay,
Is there a chance that we could see the street view of that?
well, satellite. And so did it change onto the satellite when I clicked it?
Yeah.
No, yet the little yellow man in the lower right-hand corner, just drag and drop it on top of Crown Court, and it should show it.
Like that?
Yep. Well, we on Drury Drive, but
Okay, so,
so I think you're on the
and I assume that's Crown on the left where the red car is. And this,
I think Crown may be on the other side of
Yeah, the perpendicular road.
where am I going? Further down Norwood?
I believe so.
I don't know that I'm getting the right intersection here. All right, I can't do any better. Dan, can you do any better?
Well, I can try opening up on my computer and sharing my screen.
Okay.
So if you can just stop share, let me see what I can do to pull that up for the group.
hey, Dave, should we ask to get crash data on this?
Well, we certainly can ask. Well, I'm just remembering that Kelly did ask us to be judicious in our request for the crash data.
Okay.
So,
Yeah,
I think we need to keep that in mind.
well,
Do you want me to share my screen? I have it up.
I'm just okay. I just got there. So
Oh, okay.
Coming from Drury. Okay.
yeah, let me. So here's Crown Court. And here, this is the Crown Court, Norwood intersection. That's Drury Drive across the, on the other side of the intersection. You can tell because of the grass median.
Dan, where is that stop sign right there? Where is that on? Is that on Crown? Where
That's
that?
at the intersection of Crown and Norwood. So this is Norwood coming this way,
Okay.
and even though it says Drury here, that's Drury over here. So the two signs.
Yeah.
So this is Drury. This where the X is Norwood, and this stop bar is Crown Court. I'm just going to pull back a little bit to get maybe a better view. So yeah, you can see the sign here. It says Crown Court.
Yeah, so that stop sign and line is on Crown, and the traffic is coming from the right, and the resident is proposing a stop sign like right across the street there for the
So coming
traffic from the right.
So going from on Norwood down towards Mamaroneck Avenue.
I would assume so. I mean, because if you were doing it on the uphill side, it just wouldn't be feasible to put a stop sign.
Yeah, I think this might be the concern because it's going to flow down to Crown or at Norwood, and you have this Y here. So you know this is Raleigh, and this is the continuation of Norwood. So Norwood intersects with Raleigh, and then goes down to Crown, and then on to Mamaroneck Avenue. So but again, let me just take a look at the request. Yeah, so on Norwood at the intersection with Crown on the northeast corner, which
Okay, so onto this, anything you want to add?
I'm a little unfamiliar with that side of Mamaroneck, but it does seem like it, with that steep curve, it may need some looking into. I don't know if we want to also keep bugging for incident reports there.
Karen, anything?
I mean, I can see where they're at with this. I mean, can it be put in there logistically? Can it be a stop sign be put in there?
Right.
Is it too close to that? I mean, with the
you have
utility,
a utility pole.
yeah, with the utility pole, where could that go? Logistically, like where could that be?
Well, you'd have to maybe do some trimming here. You could post the I think you put either put on the tree or put a channel post in front of the tree. Make sure you avoid the roots. And just
Okay.
put it in there.
Well, I think that's reasonable.
Okay. Robert Stark. Oh, I went, yeah, Robert Stark. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Now we can hear you.
Okay. So we're talking about a stop sign on Norwood, right? Not on Crown.
Correct. There's one now on Crown, and the resident is asking for one on Norwood.
Yeah. I'm just gonna pull just to the other side of the intersection. See if that a little bit too far.
Since we're talking about stop signs, this is kind of a off the subject, but I was visiting some people out on the island and in Port Washington. Their stop signs have LED lights around the octagon of the stop signs that's powered by a solar panel. And it occurred to me that it's much more visible. Stop signs often are not very clear or visible, especially at night. So I know it's a off topic, but since we're talking about stop signs, I thought I would just mention it.
Actually, I think in reviewing, they talk about the northeast corner. I think it's this corner. So it's the traffic that's heading from Amerenik Avenue up Norwood. I think what their concern is, the pretty, the curve here on Norwood. So just as, this motorist wouldn't necessarily see Crown Court right around the corner, that I think the people on Crown Court wouldn't see the traffic coming from Amerenik Avenue on Norwood. I think that when they talk about the northeast corner, I think that's the corner they're referring to.
Huh. Okay, so my assumption that they wouldn't be asking for one on an uphill grade was maybe not correct.
Yeah, like I think the letter does refer to Norwood at the intersection with Crown Court on the northeast corner. So, I mean, I think Crown is a north-south, or sorry, is a north-south road. So that would mean the right side would be the northeast.
Okay.
Around the curve portion. Yeah, I think that's fairly up on. Yeah, that's what I just said. I mean, I have not had a chance to really review the agenda because I just got today. And here's the sentence: drivers on vehicles traveling up on Norwood also cannot see vehicles coming out of Crown Court until they almost reach the intersection. So I think that's that was the intersection of concern, not the other side.
Okay, Lucia?
No, I'm good. I was just wondering if we had to do a data crash down the, but if it's too much, then I'll go with the flow.
Sharon?
I'm still looking at a different map and just trying to make sure I understand which corner it is. Because if it's coming down from Raleigh and Norwood going with Drury on the right, I don't see how anyone would even see the sign. If it's definitely coming up the hill from Norwood, then I might have a different response.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that leaves me. Yeah, it seems like we're not sure which side it is. I would say, and the resident isn't here to help us. So I would suggest that we send an email to the resident and ask him to tell us which corner he meant,
May I interrupt for 1 minute?
Yep.
I've noticed a common theme that's while I've been doing this with you guys. I really think we have to encourage residents that when they have these requests, that they are present at these meetings. Because when we have these questions that come up, that could be clear, we can get clarity very quickly if they were, a part of this hour, then it wouldn't get kicked down the road. This would get, resolved a little bit. I mean, of course, we have all other issues, but that sometimes happen. But I think the very least is if something is important enough for a resident to bring to our attention, I do encourage them to please, interact and be a part of this.
I agree with you, Karen, but how do you get the resident to come if they just fill out the incident report?
Well, you can't make people do anything, but we can encourage them.
No, I understand.
I
but
think love for you to be part of this. If we could just maybe when we respond, let them know, we really, because there might be questions that might come up that we can get
Right.
resolved much quicker with you being a part of the meeting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. I wish there was a way that we could, once they fill out the incident report, if we could get right back to them and ask them to.
Perhaps we could put that somewhere on those incident reports.
I'm sorry?
Maybe like when they're doing that, like the standard way we would, I don't know how exactly this would work, but just so it's standard fare, that
Yeah.
it's put to them that, hey, it would, to make this move quicker, the questions coming up, we can
Come
get
to
them
the
answered
meeting.
at that meeting.
Right,
If
right. So that way we
part of
don't
it.
have to keep putting it off. I
Yeah,
agree.
'cause I feel badly that a lot of people feel that a
Mm-hmm.
lot of issues keep getting pushed down the pike, but if they're
Right.
not present to answer questions,
Right.
they're not
I
helping
agree.
themselves with their
I
with
agree.
the issue.
Phone number? We have a phone number for Mr. Skordinsky. You'd like me to call?
No, I don't want to get involved in that in the middle of the meeting. I think it's a good idea, and I think the way to handle it is to update the incident report, put in verbiage that says that, thank you for this, we'll put it on the agenda, and please, oftentimes these questions, but please, if you can, please attend them so that we can interact with you directly. And then the other thing I would do is I would give similar verbiage to the village employees who respond to these emails and have them put it right in their boilerplate response, saying, so I'll take care of that.
Couldn't we also ask them to include a copy of a map? I mean, you could print it right off of
That's
here
a good idea.
and just mark that, because even if there was a red mark where they wanted the stop sign, I would know exactly what they wanted. It would be easier to answer.
Right.
I don't know if it'll also be helpful. On the agenda itself, there is a page for suggested stop sign. I don't know.
If you look at the map included, there is a picture where they want the stop sign. It's on the corner of Crown and Norwood going down to Mamaroneck Avenue.
Oh,
Let me look here.
Yeah,
Yeah, it says location of proposal, stop sign. He's right. There's Crown.
Oh yeah, it's coming up. It's coming up the hill.
You see it?
Yeah.
David? Yeah.
Okay.
the other thing is that I drove by there today to see, and I found in the past that it's always better for me to see the actual intersection and how dangerous it really is, because it always seems very dangerous to the residents, and at some point we have to try and make a call as to how dangerous is it really. And the Google Earth Street View is good, but it still doesn't give you a sense of how dangerous it is. So I'm going to suggest that we kick it to the next meeting, and any of us that can just take a look at the intersection, so we're better able to judge the need for a stop sign there.
there is a resident who does have his raised hand.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah, I will. Okay.
I can't see anything.
Okay, I believe
Is it me, Daniel?
Larry F. Yes.
Yeah, can I make a comment on that?
Yes.
All right, dozen years ago, when I was a district school bus driver, I had a school bus stop on Crown Court, and the problem putting a stop sign at that location is you got a blind curve coming off the avenue. It's uphill. You have a lot of foliage growth. I used to come out with the bus very carefully coming out of Crown Court back down Norwood to the avenue. You know, the only people that live in that area of Harbor Heights are residents. Nobody has any business cutting through there. There's no commercial traffic per se. It's all residents. And, you know, I think maybe some kind of, you know, local community notice or campaign would, well, I think that also, if you'll notice, there was a kids playing in the street sign or something on the way up. I think that's how they compensated 40 years ago. because of the curve, because people, when they come off the avenue and come up that hill, are kind of gunning the accelerator a little just to get up the hill. And all of a sudden there's Crown Court in front of them. I don't know. It's, I think visibility around there is pretty short. The sight line is short. I don't think, you'd have to do a lot of research before you consider a stop sign. Maybe some other kind of signage, you know, caution signs or something like that. Just a thought, that's all.
Okay. So anybody else have any other comments on this? All right, any objection to pushing it to next week, and we'll get a definite confirmation on whether it's uphill or downhill, and we'll get a chance to take a look for ourselves at the intersection?
No objection.
No objection.
Okay, so then we'll move on to number 2, which is Fenimore Road and Plaza Avenue, no overnight commercial parking. And this is from Mark Recchia, who is the property owner of 339 Center Avenue, which is a multifamily property. He says that the commercial vehicles park on the street overnight, and then they use their personal cars to save the parking spaces during the day, and then they turn it back over to their commercial vehicles at the end of the day, and the homeowners or the tenants and the residents have nowhere to park their car on the street. So this, before I turn it over to the residents and to you guys, this brings up a bit of a sticky issue, which is who has the right to park on the street there? Is it the residents, or is it the commercial owners, or does anybody have a right to have the parking there? And I'm not sure. I don't have enough experience to know how the village deals with that sort of thing. The only other thing is that when I saw that address, it looked familiar to me, and I looked back. And a few months ago, we had a request from one of the tenants at his property at 339 Center Avenue
Yeah,
for a handicap spot in front of their
Yep.
house.
Yeah.
And I think we granted that. Whether they'd actually put it up or not, I don't know.
yes,
When we looked at it, we could see that the property it's a multi-family house, and there's a large driveway, and there's a large parking area behind, which is filled up with commercial vehicles. So the tenants of the building are not allowed any parking on the premises, so that the building owner can rent out the parking to the commercial vehicles. So it could be that by banning the commercial vehicles on the street, that we would be enabling this property owner to raise his prices for the parking of the commercial vehicles on his property. So I don't know how involved in that we want to get. Dan, do you have any background on commercial vehicles versus resident vehicles?
Sure. Yeah, lacking any other restriction, as long as a vehicle is registered and has proper plates on it, it's a public parking space. It's open to anything. That's kind of the why you have public parking. It's for anyone who is really driving a legally registered vehicle. We do have. You're right. In the residential districts of the village, there is a prohibition of parking commercial vehicles. I think in the industrial area, I can't recall what the restriction is off the top of my head. I mean, I can look it up real quick. And well, if you want to talk amongst yourselves. Give me a moment.
Okay, do any of the commissioners have any thoughts on this? I'll just open it up. I'm not gonna go by name.
I think unfortunately it's for that resident living there. That type of place, it's open to basically anybody wanting to park there.
First come, first serve.
Yeah,
Yeah, unfortunate.
it's part of living in a multifamily in that particular area.
Mm-hmm.
Sadly, that's part of it. Not a lot that can be done.
It is the industrial area too. I mean, it's
True.
It's part of what, comes with living there, sadly, in those, you don't have your own designated spots.
Okay.
okay.
That's
Anybody
that.
else? Okay, so then I'm just going to table this item and we'll move on. I see in attendance a gentleman by the name of Tim Grant, who I think was on one of the items we have under old business. Can Mr. Grant be allowed to speak?
Absolutely. Mr. Grant, all you need to do is unmute yourself. Oh, there it is.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hi. Thank you for welcoming me to the Traffic Commission meeting. Glad to be here tonight. And I was the resident that suggested a stop sign on the intersection of Northbury and Brook Street. And I heard Ms. Kligman's comments from earlier, so I'm happy to be the resident who submitted the request and happy to take any questions on it. I live on Northbury Avenue, so I see the traffic patterns on the street morning, noon, and night. And I'm sure you're familiar with this street. It's a very narrow street. A lot of pedestrians due to the school, Bellows Elementary, as well as the ice cream shop on the corner of Northbury and Halsted. And because it's such a long block with no no traffic calming in the middle of this long block, no stop sign, no speed bump, the cars just fly by. And there's a lot of children on the block as well, which just it makes me seem like it's an accident waiting to happen, which is why I brought it to the village's attention. I frequently try to cross Northbury Avenue at the intersection of Brook, and currently there is a crosswalk with a sign instructing the drivers to yield when pedestrians are in the crosswalk. Unfortunately, that sign is routinely ignored.
He's gonna have to get me a laptop out of the chief's budget.
Yeah, I
Because the
frequently
phone's not keeping it.
have a
Not keeping up.
stroller I'm pushing on the block, so
I'm tired of
perhaps
this.
a pretty sympathetic pedestrian, and the cars still don't
I don't know
even
if it's
stop for
means.
a dad with a
Access
stroller.
to the meeting.
So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. That's a pedestrian angle, but there is a car angle as well, which is when you're on Brook Street trying to make a turn onto Northbury, either a right or left-hand turn, you have to nose out onto Northbury to an uncomfortable degree to see past the parked cars, and I guess it's the eastbound lane of Northbury, the cars heading towards Boston Post Road. You really have to nose out to an uncomfortable degree to see past those parked cars. And I think a three-way stop there at that intersection would help with that problem as well. So I think it'd be a good move for both pedestrians and drivers at the intersection, and happy to take questions.
We appreciate your willingness to participate while lodging this complaint and this issue. That is a really hairy area. I know exactly what you're talking about. It's a really dicey situation. And yes, there are a ton of children over there. I know exactly what you mean when you have to inch out, and there's a lot of other neighborhoods that have that issue where you have to sort of inch out further than is really safe. I think that we have to check to see if that's something that could be implemented. You're right, though. It does sound very dangerous. And sadly, though, without incident reports, accident waiting to happen. Yes, I do agree with that, but we actually have to have documentation if there was that happening. I know it sounds awful. And I
And the
hate
chief,
that.
and yeah, the chief said that there wasn't any
Yeah.
crash data for
Yeah,
those intersections.
I know.
So without crash data, if nobody's already had an accident, we're not allowed to put a stop sign in?
Well, there's something called the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, and it establishes what they call warrants for certain signage. So I think what Mr. Grant was suggesting was an all-way stop, or you call three-way, but now the modern term is all-way stop. And for an all-way stop to be, put in place, there has to be some sort of, accident history, and it's usually, I think it's 5 accidents in a 12-month period.
Right.
Reason being, when you install stop signs, you might actually cause rear end collisions with vehicles stopping short or things like that. If you look at Northbury Avenue, I think there's already, like I said, we have a crosswalk there, a crossing guard. It's in a school zone. I think the school zone speed limit is either 15 or 20 miles an hour. And then the other thing about stop signs, and I've said this to the board, um, you know, there's a ton of data on this and research. Stop signs do not slow down traffic. When someone pulls away from a stop sign, they're back up to full speed in about 150 feet. Also, the perception is when there is a stop sign, people feel like they're being slow down, so that sometimes they actually go faster after exiting the intersection. They have unfortunately what they call the California stop, which is the rolling stop, which you know that's another factor that you have to consider. Um, but that's why you do have warrants for always stops, because they are supposed to use where you do have accident history to determine who has right of way. Also, if you have, we were just talking about the prior discussion with Norwood, if you have roadway geometry, which really makes it difficult to see what's going on, then you can also look at that. But in this case, I believe that these are essentially 2 straight roads which intersect. It's a classic T intersection.
So what if it wasn't an all-way stop? Because if there was a stop sign, number one, I think if I remember correctly, they would lose a parking spot at that corner, which would actually give more clearance for somebody trying to make the left turn off of Brook.
Yeah, and that actually that maybe you may want to look at that as a more, opening up the vista for the vehicles making turns from Brook onto North Barry.
And are there any signs that we could put up without having crash history that would assist if people aren't going to stop at a stop sign and you need crash history? Is there some other sign that we don't need that for? That because I know that intersection,
Yeah,
and I can't tell you how many times I've almost been hit trying to inch out
Yeah, me too.
by people just flying down. And it's not actually a long section between Carvel and Boston Post Road. So if you cut it in the middle, to get up to full speed makes no sense because there's another traffic light right there. So to some extent, it would slow people down.
Sharon, on Tompkins, they had this issue a couple years ago, and there is something about the tree height in those areas. So there might be something about those shrubs being too tall.
yeah, I mean, and that's kind of one of the other problems is the visual obstructions. That's why I mentioned if you remove a parking space at the edges of the intersection, it would open up that vista for the motorists to have a better perspective of the opposing vehicular traffic.
But it wouldn't slow down the opposing vehicular traffic.
And not less than the school speed limit we already have in place on. We do have speed limit. We do have a, was it 25-mile-an-hour speed limit?
Yeah, and even with the speed trailers, it doesn't help. Because
Yeah,
they fly by with that there also, because it was there a couple weeks ago.
Do we have the data from that?
Because I also come out of Brook and make a left onto Barry, and this morning it was so bad, there was a van parked at the corner of, I couldn't even see. I was like halfway in the middle of the street to get out.
Do we have the data from the speed signs that tells us how fast people are actually traveling on North Barry and how far over the speed limit that is? It's not crash data, but it shows how, what the speed.
it'll show counts, and it'll also show the range of speeds. It'll be like what the average speed is, what
Do we have that?
I haven't seen it. I didn't know the machines were out there.
I don't know the date, but I do remember seeing them not too
Yeah,
long ago, and they've been out there several times, actually.
yeah, they have.
Yeah, I can ask the police chief to forward that data.
Hi, this is Tim Grant again, and thank you everyone again for considering the issue. At this particular intersection, yeah, I can tell you it's not shrubs or landscaping that are blocking the view. It is the parked cars at that corner. So I do think that would help from a driver's perspective, and
Yeah.
from a pedestrian perspective. Yes, it is in a school zone. Yes, there is currently a crosswalk. Yes, there's even a sign instructing drivers to yield when pedestrians are in the crosswalk. But I can tell you, and also there's a crossing guard during school hours. But I can
Right.
tell you, all of that taken into consideration, it still doesn't fix the problem. Cars are still flying by. So I would encourage the commission to, look more broadly beyond just crash data. Maybe it doesn't satisfy that metric, but from a neighborhood perspective, from speaking to people in the neighborhood, we all know that that intersection is an issue, and the cars are just flying down that block. And maybe, I don't know, a speed bump in the middle of the block, something to calm the speeds really should be done, in my opinion.
We can't put speed bumps because of the fire trucks, right, Andrew?
Yes, yeah, that would affect the suspension on the fire trucks.
Okay, so maybe a stop sign is the way to go then, because I know it's a recognized issue because there's a lot there already, but it hasn't fixed the problem, unfortunately.
I don't know if another stop sign will fix the problem also. It's just, people are gonna speed, they're gonna speed. There's,
Yeah, but if we can get the data from the speed
the speed trailer,
data, yeah, it'll at least quantify what the
Right.
existing conditions are.
Dan, are you gonna, ask the chief for that?
Yeah, I'll ask the chief for that.
Thank you.
Even if a stop sign doesn't slow everyone down, it would slow some people down. And it also gives a police officer who's at the corner of Brook the opportunity to start ticketing people who don't stop.
And
So
I
it's
do
not
think
catch everyone, but it will stop some.
yeah. And I think it would encourage drivers to actually check and see if anyone's in the crosswalk trying to cross, which they don't do at the moment.
Okay,
Okay,
Yeah.
so we'll put it on next month's agenda for the speed data. But there is a strong sense of the commission that maybe we do need to do something there.
Yep.
Dan, I sent you the zoning map as far as Center Avenue goes, and that is the manufacturing district, that 300
Yeah.
block.
Yeah, I was looking at there's no prohibition for commercial vehicles. That's just for the residential zone. There are some commercial vehicle prohibitions in the code. I just haven't had a chance to really do a deep dive to refresh my recollection on what is and is not allowed in the industrial zone with commercial vehicles. But again, it is an industrial zone, so the presence of commercial vehicles would be something you would expect to see.
Okay. Okay, we'll move on then to the next item. I see Lindsay Wright or Rate is also now an attendee. And she was the one who put the Taylor's Lane and Colonial Court item on the agenda last month under old business is number 8 this month. And so what last month we asked for crash data, and Chief DeRussa said there was no crash data to be had. We also said we were going to, if we could, take a look at each of us would go down and take a look at it. I drove it. I did notice that the 10-mile-per-hour speed limit sign is a yellow advisory sign. It's presented in both directions before the curve at Colonial, I think it is. The speed limit is 25 on the whole road. And the section from Colonial all the way out to the post road, it's a double yellow line road, and there is no sidewalk. There is no shoulder. So the people that are walking there have no place to go except on the grass or the street. Lindsay, did you have anything that you wanted to add to what you had said previously? You just need to unmute and you'll be able to talk. There you go.
Hi. I think I outlined a lot of things, pretty well in the first one. And I did see, I believe, David out there when he was checking out the location. Leaving the meeting, I've talked a lot with my neighbors and everyone. It's one of these things where all of a sudden people are talking about it and everybody is, we're just hoping that they'll be able to get some repairs and get the speeds down. One of my neighbors did suggest, which I think related to the last part, was putting a stop sign where Shadow and Taylor's Lane meet to slow down the speed, similar to what someone was suggesting on that Brook Street. But basically, by the time that the cars are coming, the speed sign is actually, I don't know if you're aware, but they actually put one of those speed electronic signs on Taylor's this month. But it's actually on the side heading towards the post road. And I think a lot of the fast moving cars are coming from the post road. I mean, they're both, but yeah, I mean, problem still continues, and we hope that it'll, find a way to get it fixed. But someone did suggest that adding a stop sign could be an easy fix, because we know we're not going to get a sidewalk anytime soon.
David, I did take a ride by there also.
Okay.
And it is,
walked through there.
it's very dangerous. The street is very narrow. I don't know where these people, walk when they do walk. I went all the way up and back up and down. And maybe until they do a sidewalk, what else could we do?
Anybody else?
I walk it a lot of times because I'm not far from there. It's a very
Dangerous.
it's wild. People drive, they hit that turn, and they just come in, and it's wild. Everything she's saying is absolutely true, which the residents that are bringing us these issues are not, there's not anyone who isn't being honest about these things. It's more of a question of, now what do we do? The issue of stop signs continually comes up, and we are being told, based on the criteria, that a lot of times it doesn't meet the standard to be able to get that. So if that doesn't happen, what other alternatives can we offer these residents to help this problem?
It's a good question, Karen. And Also here, since Shadow Lane is so far from the Boston Post Road, putting the stop sign there wouldn't really stop the speeding
Because it's
problem.
not so far up when you have to stop anyway.
Yeah.
Well, it's actually when you're driving the Post Road, when you're driving from the Post Road up Taylor's Lane, right before that 10-mile-an-hour sign is where it hit Shadow.
Right.
And I guess I meant if we did a stop sign both ways so that people had to stop on Taylor's Lane, that they had to stop when they got to the Shadow intersection to slow down. And the other part is just the sidewalk between Shadow and Colonial Court that is crumbling. Even getting that repaired could at least give people a safe space, because people walk on, it's really hidden. I mean, it's when you come around that curve, it's also very shady, so you can't even see people. And just even getting that section repaired would make a big difference.
Is that something that we are able to get done, guys? I don't know how that works with sidewalks.
Well, sidewalks are repaired by the village. But
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Sidewalks are under the purview of the village. But let me just see if I just want to take a look at the street view.
Okay.
Dan, we could hardly hear you.
I don't know why that's the case.
I hear you now.
Okay.
I
Hear you
don't know
now.
if
Hold the
something
computer
changed.
a little bit closer.
Hear you now.
Hear you now. Okay, let's get that information. And then also, once we gather that, find out what it is we can do regarding the possibility of
Yeah,
a
so
stop
you're
sign.
talking about a sidewalk on
And-
Shadow Lane, or where's the sidewalk that you're referring to?
Oh, I'm just saying literally the shoulder of Taylor's Lane between Colonial Court and Shadow, where the curve is, where the people are whipping around. There's literally there's not even a shoulder to walk on. So we have
Okay,
no
so
grass, no shoulder, nothing.
Yeah, so kind of where there's the stone wall.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the green fence.
Yeah.
Yeah, there. And the other thing, which was that actually when you turn off Boston Post Road onto Taylor's Lane, the intersection where the gas station is, that's the other area of concern. We have probably hundreds of kids walking there every day, and the cars can't see around when they make like a right from Boston Post Road onto Taylor's. You can't see around the corner. And since we're walking in the street, people
on the
can't
McGinn
see
Pond
us.
side?
That's vegetation.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about the McGinn Pond side, correct? So, across, that's we on one side is our former dump site, the other side is the pond. So they're
Yeah,
walking
Castle
along the
Court.
pond side. Is that what you're referring to? Is that
Dan?
what you're referring to?
I mean, like right across from the gas station.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dan, if you could hear me, she means the corner of Post Road at Taylor's Lane, the back property of the Castle Court development where all the vegetation is.
Okay, yeah, I can ask code enforcement to take a look at that, see if we can get some action taken on that to reduce any visual obstruction.
And over there, which I don't know if this is I know that there's some issues with the Post Road, but the street is also crumbling there. So again, the kids have to walk into the Post Road to even get to the sidewalk.
I mean, Post Road is a New York State DOT road.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's
so contact them.
Certainly report it to them. I know we just reported some issues on Keeler, which is also a state road. But I don't know what their long-term plans are for any restoration work. I wish I could give you a better answer on that, but that's when it comes to the DOT, I hate to use this term, but that's beyond my pay grade.
Okay, so it sounds like in addition to what Dan has said he'll do, that we haven't really addressed the two basic questions that Lindsay has brought up, which is the safety of that curve in both directions and the speed on the Taylor's Lane section between Shadow and the Post Road. And frankly, I'm not really able to provide any answers as to what we can do to address that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send an email to Kelly to Ms. Winstrup and ask her to engage the traffic consultant that the village has to answer our questions as to what other measures we can suggest for those two issues. And it's not like they're unusual situations. We get them all the time, and we just don't know what traffic calming or mitigation, speed mitigation avenues are available to us and where they would be best appropriate. So that's what I would suggest.
Well, thank you very much for, keeping it on the radar. We all really appreciate it.
Okay.
Okay.
Get back to you next month, hopefully. Are there any other residents here that want to say anything about anything under old business? You have to raise your hand, please. Okay, nobody's raising their hand. Okay, so old business, I think numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 are things we can address because we're waiting for village employees to get back to us. Number 6 is the Brickmore Shopping Center intersection. And last month when we talked about that, we said that we were going to ask Dan to, when he talks to the county about the feasibility of a left turn arrow coming out of the Bricksmore Shopping Center intersection. And I don't know if we ever got that to Dan. Dan, did you get any requests like that?
I think Lucia wants to.
David, it was a left-hand turn going into the Avalon. Not coming out of the shopping center.
Okay, you're right. Yep.
So but that's still the same traffic light, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I'll follow up with the county on that. I don't know what their what their hardware is like. It could either be easy or it could be impossible with the current system they have
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so the last item in old business is 531 Center, Waverly and Ogden. And the 531 Center part of that was not our concern. It was about a crumbling sidewalk. But the Waverly and Ogden intersection coming out of Ogden, turning left or right onto Waverly, the resident said that there was not enough visibility there.
Right.
So we said we were going to, again, try and take a look at it.
I did take a ride.
What'd you see?
I saw the same thing. It's when you're going, the resident is right. You can't really see anything, either making a left or a right. And I also did see in front of the 531 Waverly, the sidewalk was really bad over there. The walking area is really bad over there. So, I mean, I don't know what the answer is with the stop sign again, the stop signs. Do we have to ask for crash data?
Well, I looked at it and there's no parking on Waverly on the right going towards Ogden.
Right.
Quite a distance from the corner. So I don't think pushing back the no parking is going to improve the visibility any. The visibility is what it's going to be. It's already pretty well cleared from that corner. Andrew, I see you nodding your head there.
Yes, I agree. There's not much you can do in that area. I know what you're talking about. It's tough to get a fire truck out of there.
Yeah, it's a tough area.
And then if you're coming off of Ogden from Railroad Way through the industrial area by the railroad tracks, it's even tougher to make the left back toward Rockland because the building obstructs you. It's not an easy intersection.
What about the tree in front of the resident's house? He says
On which
it's overgrown, the tree, and he believes it's dangerous. The tree in front of the resident's house?
I mean, I would defer to Dan, and like he said before, I have code enforcement look at it and see if it's an obstruction, if it's a village code violation.
And also take a look at the sidewalk.
Yeah, what I could also do, I mean, I think I've talked to the traffic commission about the CDBG process and us trying to apply for grants to effectuate the additional phases of the improvements around Mamaroneck Avenue School.
Mhm.
So this area is also located in a low to moderate income area. What I can do, I'll talk to our traffic engineer, see if he can kind of give it a back of the envelope estimate and look at the intersection to see if there's any improvements that can be made. If I can get that done quickly enough, and if we have the ability to apply for additional CDBG money, this might be a project that we could look at doing. But I don't want to make any promises because those grants are due in 6 weeks, and this is kind of the first time I'm thinking about that for this intersection. But I can talk to our traffic engineer, see if there's a general suggestion or layout, and maybe like I said, a back of the envelope estimate that we can get some grant money from Westchester County for.
Any other commissioners want to speak on that issue? Okay. Anybody else have any other business they want to bring up? So you've all received the minutes from last meeting in April and the previous meeting in February. Are there any objections to the minutes as presented? No. Okay, not hearing any objections, I grant that the minutes be approved. And I'll ask for a motion to close the meeting.
Oh, we have to, we need to, who's gonna approve the minutes? February and April?
I just
Well,
did. Nobody
okay.
objected, so it's approved.
Okay, perfect. All right, sorry.
Anybody have a motion to close the meeting?
I'll make the motion.
Second?
Second, third.
Okay. Any
Who's-
opposed?
I'm sorry, who's second?
Sharon?
Sharon did? Okay, great.
Anybody opposed? The meeting is now closed. We'll see you next month.
Be
Thank you,
safe.
David.
Thank you. Nice seeing you guys.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks,
you.
Dan.
Thank